Welcome to this character generator tutorial. This uses Yanfly's common event menu plugin. You'll need to get that from yanfly.moe. There's another plugin here we'll look at in a second that also is from Yanfly. And if you've never used Yanfly's plugins before, you should check them out. They're wonderful and they will make everyone's game better. So let's see what I mean when I say this. New game. We get some generic text about how we're going to have to make a character. This is a little more stylized, but you can have it say, make a character. Asks us for a name. We don't want to be player, that's plain. We'll be Rube. So we select this. Now this is where Yanfly's plugin comes in. Now there are other character generators out there, and they do similar things, but what Yanfly's common event menu allows us is a more visual index for what we're going to choose. So we can be male or female. We could be more than that. We have alien, monster, demon, angel, whatever you want. Those would be lame. Don't do those. Generic. We'll be male. That's super generic. And you see now we have 8 different options. You could have more than 8. This is how lazy I was. I've made 8. And each one is linked with a picture. So you can see they're grayed out when we don't want to select them, but the one we're selecting comes in color. And this could be pictures of portraits, it could be individual characters, you could have much more complicated scripts. This is the basis that will let you do this sort of stuff, and it's all thanks to Yanfly's engine. So let's start with portrait 3. This will also generate for us a actual icon over here. So here's our character icon. If we move, that would be that character, so you can see what that looks like. And here's where you can have back to just generic menus, purpose of expedition. This could also be something more simple like class. We're going to say we're a treasure hunter. Rube the treasure hunter. And it's going to show us, is this all accurate? Name that we picked, the gender we picked, and the class or purpose we picked in this case. And here's our portrait. So before we do some changes, so you could change these things, let's say all set, and see this in the world. So we enter the game world. If we bring up the menu, here's our name that we picked, the portrait we picked, and the class or purpose that we picked. So all shows up in the menu. Also we're in bad health, but that's unrelated to this current plugin. And just to show what else we can do, this also requires Yanfly's message core plugin to allow us to use a /AF command, which will let us look at our portrait without having to manually input that. So you can say /AF player1 or whatever you do. And I did this all with macro, so it shows the player's name with this message box and the portrait. And it asks, does this work? Well, yeah, it does. So just to prove that it works, start over. We say new game. And we come back, skip this text, move on to the name. This time will be Ruby, which seems more feminine, so we'll be a woman. So we've got Ruby. We'll be female, and you see this brings up actually what is a different common event core, which gives us a bunch of female portraits. And again, you could have more than this. You can change this text, change this text, but it's all fair game. Pick one, and let's be her. Oh wait, I didn't really want her, so we go through this, we get back to this. Oh, I'm not happy with this portrait at all. Ruby doesn't seem like she has brown hair, right? Or black hair. So let's change gender portrait. Go back, we can even change gender at that point. And this time we're going to be her. Well, that's red hair, that's nice. I feel like she's a little more interesting. And she's going to be a monster hunter instead. So now we've got this, and again, if you want to make any changes, we can change the name, the portrait, anything. But we're going to go ahead just to show this. Come back to the game world, run up to this guy so we can show this off. Again, here's our new name, Ruby. We've got this new portrait and Monster Hunter. And again, the portrait shows up when we talk to people using the /AF command through Yanfly's message plugin. So again, you'll need Yanfly's common event script plugin and his message plugin, and the macro one makes it all easier. So what I'll show you is what this actually looks like in your engine when you type in these commands. So here we are in the actual editor, and you can see here, this is the actor tab. We have the name set as player. All of the image files are blank. That's not essential, but it does force the character to pick an image, and we'll come back to that when we get to the actual image picking. So this is the basic setup, and you can change classes and so on, whatever you want there normally. So we come to common events here, and the key here is that our common events, and we have multiple ones. We have this number 3 and 4 set as the key things that set up the common event that we want to run. So this is for male and female selection. That menu option where we had male and female, that's where that comes in. And all of this is generic Yanfly setup for this, so you can see that in the help file for the Yanfly plugin. But the key here is the one thing we want to keep note of is this cancel event. We don't want it to be canceled, so we add that. And you can see here there are 16 different files through this 8 through 24, whatever I have here. It's too small on my screen. It doesn't matter, and those each do specific things. So you can look at those. That's all basic Yanfly data. The only thing there is we've added a sound and then the actual create a class. And so this gives our portrait, our character model, and our battler. And so that's all through just generic tabs. You'll want to make sure that that is running. So here's the pictures themselves. You can see in the background here I've got a bunch of different pictures. Each one has a different highlighted one, so that's the key to this working, is you need a bunch of different pictures. And so you can edit these in whatever image editing program you prefer. You can see here I've just got the one on the screen that is the blonde-haired man, but you can see in the background there are a bunch of different ones, mostly for the female characters. I've cropped some of it, and so you'll want to set up each one for those, and you'll need to make an individual one. So whatever you want your pictures to be in that Yanfly common event, you need to do those images. And that brings us then to the actual data, and this is the event itself. You've noticed I've set it as an auto run event. I want it to happen as soon as the player logs into this screen, and then there's some text, and then the various things you can see happening in that. I'll show you another screen here in a second, and that'll keep telling you some of the other things, but you can see there, like, it asks for gender, name, all of that stuff that you saw in the actual event when we ran it, so you can see how that works here. And you'll notice there's a variable set for gender, because we'll want that to come back here. Here we've got the class setup here, so there's the different classes or purposes in the case of this game that I've been working on. So you can set all of that up, and not a whole lot going on there, though you could do more interesting stuff with all of this. You could have specific outfits for each class, whatever you wanted to do in terms of that, but you can see how the basic setup works here. So that's all there, and once we get through all that, it asks, do we really want all this stuff? And that's where we have some labels working. So you notice there were labels throughout this. If we want this all to work, it'll take us back to this label. Otherwise, it'll confirm all the details, and you can see how we've set all of that up. So that's basically the setup for this plugin to work. If you have questions or comments or suggestions for making this better, I'd be glad to hear them, because I'm always glad to have a better working character generator. This is the basic idea and should give some flexibility for those who want to work with it.